August 22nd, 2022. I'd like to go ahead and open this up. And we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask Captain Landon to come up and lead us in the pledge.
Good evening. I would like to introduce our explorer to come up. And she's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please place your hand over your chest and then begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Explorer, for the record, what is your name?
Skylar Fernandez, sir.
And how long have you been an explorer?
2.5 years, sir.
Oh, well, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Moving on to roll call. Jennifer, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Bogue.
Here.
Councilmember Duncan.
Here.
Councilmember Thorpe.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Beaver.
Here.
Mayor Avila.
Here. Mr. Casey, are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
Staff has no recommended changes for this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to employee introduction. Mr. Casey will introduce our new captain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's with pleasure that, in fact, I'll move over to the podium. That I'd like to introduce Captain Julie Landon this evening, our first lady captain, female captain in the history of Yucaipa. She began her career in 1994. During her 28 years with San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, she has worked a variety of assignments, including corrections, patrol, public affairs, crimes against children, employee resources, internal affairs. She shared with me that that wasn't her favorite assignment. And most recently, the training division. Proud of being assigned to Yucaipa because she graduated from Yucaipa High School and is a longtime Yucaipa resident. Julie served the Yucaipa community as a sheriff's detective, sergeant, lieutenant, and now captain. She considers herself to be fortunate to have worked and continue to work with such a supportive community. She believes the relationship between law enforcement and communities is of the utmost importance. Julie looks forward to continuing the strong relationship the Yucaipa Police Department has had with city staff and the community. Her family includes being married to Scott Landon, who's a retired captain with the Sheriff's Department. They have one son and 2 daughters, and she likes to go boating at the river. It seems like that's something a lot of sheriff's personnel like to do, camping, riding bikes, and hiking. I'd like to welcome Julie back to the team and see if she has a few words that she'd like to add today.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. I'm just really excited to be back and continue our relationship with the community and all of you.
Thank you very much, Captain. Would you like to introduce your lieutenant, or is that something Mr. Casey will do?
I'll do that. I would like to introduce you to Lieutenant Steve Scoville. He has been employed with the Sheriff's Department for the last 25 years. He has worked in all 4 county jails, Glen Helen Rehabilitation Center, West Valley Detention Center, and Central Detention Center, and the High Desert Detention Center as a sergeant. Scoville did his patrol time at the Central Station and detective sergeant assignments with the Specialized Enforcement Division, Bomb and Arsons Detail. During his time with the Specialized Enforcement Division, he worked numerous critical incidents, including the Dorner manhunt and terrorist attack at the Inland Regional Center. Scoville chose law enforcement to serve his community and improve lives within the residents in the area. During his time with the Sheriff's Department, he has observed the community pride that is evident in Yucaipa and will strive to continue the relationship between station personnel and the residents we serve. Steve's favorite part of his job is mentoring young deputies and frontline supervisors. Steve is married to his wife, Nicole, for 26 years and has 3 children. 2 sons are currently in college at the University of New Hampshire and UC Irvine, and his daughter attends Citrus Valley High School as a junior. Steve is an avid runner and enjoys all sports, his favorite team being the Los Angeles Angels. Steve?
I would just like to thank you guys for having me in your city. I've only been here a week and I've already noticed, you know, the interaction between law enforcement and the community as a whole, which I really, really like, and I strive to continue to have that interaction with the public. So I just want to say thank you for having me.
Thank you and welcome aboard. Steve, you said you were part of the arson bomb detail?
Yes,
Go like this.
I got them all.
Okay, just want to make sure. All right, can we go ahead? We'd love to have our picture taken with you.
Okay, you guys ready on the count of three? 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Okay, moving on to public comment. This is the time for the public to speak for 3 minutes on any subject that's not currently on the agenda. In the back of the room, there are some speaker slips at the doorway. If you have something to say, please give your speaker slip to Jennifer Crawford over here on your far right. And we'll go ahead with our first speaker, Linda Villarreal. And I'd like to remind you, you have 3 minutes.
Yes. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, and guests. My name is Linda Villarreal, and I have lived in Yucaipa for over 40 years. I'm a retired school teacher. I have lived near the corner of Wildwood Canyon Road and Colorado Street, formerly called Avenue F, for over 40 years as well. I have come before you to voice my serious concern for the safety of drivers who venture to turn left onto Wildwood Canyon Road from Colorado Street. I have seen at least 2 accidents during the last 2 years when drivers have tried to turn left. There are 3 signs on Wildwood Canyon Road which include watch downhill speed and 2 that advise to slow to speed of 20 miles per hour. These signs are all but ignored, and drivers usually go at speeds of 30 to 40 plus miles per hour. In the recent past, a young man with passengers tried turning left, but something malfunctioned in his car, and the car froze mid-turn. He was hit, and the car suffered substantial damage and had to be towed. If the downhill driver had indeed been going 20 miles per hour as advised by the signs, I believe he could more easily have stopped or made a safe swerve behind the young driver, but coming downhill at 40 plus miles per hour is much more difficult. I have talked to people in my neighborhood who feel they have to tear out when they turn left from Colorado Street. It's a blind curve, and one cannot see cars coming past the curve until the cars are almost to the corner. I'm a senior citizen, but I've talked to 2 young adults in their early 20s. They told me that it was not a safe turning corner for them either. I would like to submit that a stop sign be placed at Wildwood Canyon Road and Colorado Street corner so the drivers turning left have a fighting chance to turn safely. When Colorado Street used to be called Avenue F, and some used to call it Avenue F fast, furious, and fatal, drivers used to go too fast on Avenue F. And it wasn't a terrible traffic accident on Avenue F took the life of a little girl that stop signs were put on Avenue F. Are we waiting for another terrible accident to happen on the corner of Wildwood Canyon Road and Colorado Street before we take any measures, safety measures? I would like to remind you what one of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, so eloquently stated, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Or as we say today, better safe than sorry. I would urge you as our city leaders to move to keep our streets safe for all drivers. Please put in a stop sign is my request. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if council wishes, we can update you and the community. That is a stop sign that we are moving forward on. Should be installed within a few weeks. And as it didn't meet warrants a number of years ago, we did put in striping improvements to try to improve that sight distance at that location prior to it meeting stop warrants. But it has met stop warrants now, and that stop sign will be going in the next few weeks.
Did you catch that? Very good. Thank you so much for your comments, and thank you, Mr. Casey. Our next speaker, Bill McEwen.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members and staff. Bill McEwen, 123614 4th Street. On my way to, I go to Starbucks in the morning, Starbucks right down the street here. And I was riding my bike along and I saw this tanker truck filling up with water from one of the purple pipes. And there was a young man standing there watching, he had it all hooked up and it was loading the tanker truck with recycled water. I said, I saw on the side of the tanker truck, I said, Bogue. I said, you're with Bogue? He said, oh yeah, I'm with Bogue Construction. I said, oh really? I know a Bogue. I know a few Bogues around town. It was pretty amazing because they got the contract apparently for doing the soil and whatnot for a senior citizen housing complex on 4th Street. But I just thought it was really encouraging sign to see that those purple pipes are being utilized by construction companies on projects. Our recycled water system is going to become really vital to us as we continue on with climate change. It's going to do a real number to us. We've had protracted back-to-back droughts, and that recycled water system is going to be vital to our future. I'm really glad we have it. I hope the city is keeping open communication with the water district. It is different. We got a city, we got a water district, and so there's these different actors, and it's real vital that we have that open communication. At some point in time, if it becomes bad enough where the Sierras are not delivering the water they used to the State Water Project, that water will be utilized for groundwater recharge. It's basically purified water. It's, easy. It's really, they have tertiary treatment that they do. It's really advanced technology, and it's vital to us. And keep that open communication is also vital. This morning when I met that gentleman, his name's Connor. He says he's married into your family and lives out in Beaumont. Real nice young man. And so I just wanted to put in my 2 cents for recycled water system and just the general warning about climate change, what we're going to be facing in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Our final speaker slip now will be from Amy Simmons.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and council and city staff. My name is Amy Simmons. I live at 36475 County Line Road in Yucaipa. And I'm here to update the council and city staff on what is going on at our Yucaipa Library. We just completed the summer reading program. It was a banner year. We had both children and adults participating. Readers were checking out physical books, audio, and digital books. The library had robust attendance for the entertainment part of the reading program. In fact, one Monday, there were more than 450 persons in attendance over 2 shows that we had. We had magic acts, live animal presentations, and more. Each week, librarians set out tables full of books that were related to the presentation for attendees to view and check out. And I wanted to share that at one event, I noticed a parent asking her daughters to please come out from under a table so they could go home, and they said, no, We want to live here so we could stay near these books. I could go on and on with examples of how people are so grateful for the programs provided at our library. Now with school back in session, the library offers a craft corner on Tuesdays and a special therapy dog program on Thursdays where children come to the library and read in person to service animals. And I'd like to invite you to stop by and see this magic happen between the children and the animals any Thursday at 4 p.m. And preschoolers have their own programs, toddler boot camp, and weekly story time and art programs. For adults, we have a book club that meets every third Saturday at 11 a.m. All of these enriching programs are completely free to the public. What else is offered here that reaches that level? Recently, while stalking Friends of the Library Book Nook store, I overheard a worried patient saying, with her child by her with arms full of books, "I don't have any money with me and my library card is expired, I'm sorry." And they said, "It's free, don't worry." And that little girl was thrilled. There's many more upcoming programs, including Hispanic heritage events, paint nights, superhero reading events, book sales, to name a few. The county library has started a program where free high-speed internet service is offered to families who financially qualify, along with computers and internet service in branch that are free to all. On another note, I recently submitted some pictures at the front of our library to city maintenance team via the website, showing pictures of the shrubbery overgrowing and impeding walkways coming into and out of the library, dead limbs under the canopy of our beautiful California coastal redwood tree, which could be a hazard, and dirty entryway, sidewalks, and walls where paint had been covering some graffiti, and it was the graffiti's showing through. Oops. So anyway, I wondered what our library would look like if the city would be able to devote just a little more manpower to maintain the exterior of our library. And I wanted you to consider that, to give a little more pride to the appearance and safety of our library.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Ray, did you caught all that?
We did, and it is something that we have been discussing internally, that we need to step it up a little bit there at the library. We've done some internal improvements, some HVAC improvements, some roofing improvements, but the external landscaping, external business, or building look and sidewalk look, we need to work on some. So that's certainly a conversation that we're having internally.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda any member of council like to pull?
I'd like to pull item number 4 for some discussion, if you don't mind.
Okay.
For the record, I will abstain from item number 1.
Okay, so the items are, let's see, which ones, is it 1 through 8 for consent?
7?
1 through 7, okay. With the exception of item number 4, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved. I'll second.
All right, if no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes carry it. Moving on to item number 4, Mr. Duncan.
So I need to understand exactly what's going on with Leonard and Company. I know we approved all 3 of those digital billboards, and why are we doing this with the Leonard and Company? What's the problem there? What's the issue there?
So as part of the development agreements, or at least the initial review of each project, we were working, so the applicant, in this case Leonard and Company, and the other 2 projects, which was General Outdoor, or leasing property from an underlying property owner. The other 2 applications had provided at the time information to show the long-term lease of that property. Leonard and Company, we didn't have that information at the start, so as part of the agreement, we had the property owner signature as part of the development agreement, making sure that they're aware of this activity happening. As part of the project review after it was approved, we were able to get information from the applicant showing that they had the long-term lease interest, and so with that, They've provided the necessary documentation to show that the property owner itself doesn't have to be a party to that development agreement since there's a separate binding document already in place.
So the property owner is now in agreement with the long-term lease or not in agreement?
They are. They've already, the applicant provided or furnished the long-term lease on that site, showing that they do have the interest to enter into negotiations for their equipment.
Okay.
And it says here that the applicant requested a change in a modification in the DA. That's correct?
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
just to remove the reference to the property owner signing it since they already have the legal documentation that meets that requirement. So if they didn't have that documentation, then the property owner would be a party of that agreement just to make sure that all those bases are covered, but we have that documentation.
So it's not a city initiated. All right, with that, Mr.
I'll move approval of item number 4.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. If no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. All right, any mayor and council member business reports? Anything to report?
I'm kind of going back a little bit, but I just want to comment on our new captain and lieutenant. Extraordinarily pleased that Captain Landon's back. I felt it noteworthy. I remember going on ride-alongs with Deputy Thorpe and under the supervision of Detective Landon at the time. So it's kind of very neat to see the Yucaipa Police Department come full circle. And while it's bittersweet when we see some of our personnel promote out and venture off to different parts of their career assignments, we get to experience them coming back with a lot more training and experience that it gets to benefit our great city. So kind of like I said, going back to employee introductions, but welcome both of you. I'm very pleased that you guys are here.
Anything on that side? I just want to say, I had a meeting with Omnitrans CEO last week, and we discussed about expanding bus service, especially down towards the freeway where the Kaiser Permanente is going to be built and all of that shopping center. And we're looking at ways to increase service, not only with the full-size bus, but with the local access bus. So that's something we can look forward to in the future. Okay, moving on to item number 8, designation of voting delegate and voting alternate for the 2022 League of California Cities and the 2022 Annual Conference, proposed bylaws and amendments. Jennifer Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The League Conference is going to be held on Wednesday, September 7th through Friday, September 9th at the Long Beach Convention Center. The conference includes the annual business meeting, which will take place on Friday, September 9th at 11:30 a.m. in the morning. A voting delegate and alternate must be selected by council action to vote on the proposed amendments to the Cal City's bylaws at the business meeting. Council may also designate city staff to represent the city as a voting delegate if members of the council are not available to attend the conference. There are 5 proposed amendments that are listed on page 179 of the packet, and that the recommendation before you is that you appoint a voting delegate and alternate and consider the proposed bylaws amendments for the business meeting. That's all I have.
Okay. I'm always up for doing this. I've been the routine a League of California Cities representative, but I'm not married to it. If there's anybody else that's interested.
No, you can have it.
Okay.
So then I'll formally nominate Mayor Avila as the voting delegate for the California League of Cities Annual Conference.
I'll second.
All right. If no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes carry it. Now for the alternate, if nobody wants to be an alternate, I know that Mr. Casey has traditionally been that person, but I'm sure he's not married to it either. We have enough stuff going on, so anybody like to be an alternate? I would nominate Mr. Casey then.
I'll second
second.
your nomination.
All right, if no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations or sympathies to the both of us. All right, moving on to item number 9.
Sorry,
Public-
can I have you vote on the proposed amendments to the
Oh.
bylaws?
I'm sorry, yes, of course.
I'll move the bylaws. That's my motion.
I'll second.
You have first and second. If no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries also. We good? Okay, moving on to item number 9 now. My apologies. Megan Wolf of the Public Arts Committee.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The Public Arts Committee serves as an advisory body to the City Council and administers a public arts program for the city. On July 11th, the City Council appointed Mayor Pro Tem Beaver as the City Council liaison for the committee and directed staff to return to amend Resolution Number 2020-22 to include the appointment of a City Council liaison. This council liaison will help in the selection, facilitation, and execution of public art projects for the full council to consider. Staff is recommending that City Council approve Resolution Number 2022-48, amending Resolution Number 2020-22 to add a City Council liaison to the Public Arts Committee. This concludes my report, and I can answer any questions you may have at this time.
Any questions of staff? All right, do we have a motion?
Will the art project be, have a name on the bottom that it says it was chosen by this council member?
Yes, it should.
No pressure.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
I'm kidding.
Is that a motion?
That's my motion.
Okay, we have a
I
motion.
motion to to appoint Justin as the
Council liaison to the Public Arts.
council
Committee.
liaison to the Public Arts Committee.
I'll second.
All right, we have a first and
Just to clarify, that would be to approve the resolution as well, correct?
amending resolution number
and-
2020-22.
Let me rephrase this. My motion is to approve the resolution 2022-48, amending resolution 2020-22 to add a council liaison to the Public Arts Committee, and I believe it's Justin, Mayor Pro Tem Beaver. Is that good? All right, that's my motion.
And that was my second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. If no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Welcome to the Thunderdome. Okay, moving on to item number 10. Mr. Casey, challenge coins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This item, as you said, is about challenge coins. And as council may recall, it was discussed in the goals and objectives process, and funding for it was not deemed to be one of the top priorities. But after that goals and objectives discussion, several council members came to staff relative to having a challenge coin program, but that would be funded by individual council members. Still would require council review to the extent that it includes references to the city of Yucaipa and positions with the city of Yucaipa as council member, mayor pro tem, mayor. And then if deemed appropriate, the design of the challenge coins as well. So staff is presenting those for direction this evening. If council selects one of the options, then we can move forward on that. If council so chooses, you may also provide direction to staff this evening in modifying one of these options or coming back with other options as well. With that, staff is available to answer any questions you may have, but the concepts are there before you.
All right, any questions of staff?
Yeah, I don't quite understand. Initially, it was on our goals and objective list, and it was low on the priority, but then I was approached by a fellow council member, do you want to go ahead and do this even if the city doesn't approve it? And I said, yes, I'll be glad to put some money into that. So that brings us up to this. What are we talking about tonight? Are we talking about the city paying for it? Are we talking about council members paying for it? What are we talking about exactly?
Tonight's conversation is about the design, whether you want to go forward with the program at your own cost and a design. Certainly, council could send me back to come back to you again with the funding for a program. But as it was not prioritized in the goals and objectives tonight, the topic is the program itself and potential changes to the design that's being presented this evening.
Okay, any other comments? Questions? As I articulated the last time, I think it's not appropriate for us to fund this with city money. My experience has always been, we've done this out of pocket. That's been the tradition in my department and in other communities also have done that. So I still stick to that. However, I will do whatever, however the council as a whole deems proper. Do we have any comments on the coins themselves, the selection or the design?
I'd like to just highlight one sentence that was in the staff report that wasn't mentioned. So the intent behind this is they're intended to be a way for individual council members to be able to recognize extraordinary contributions to individuals or groups in the community for doing something that is worthy of council's recognition. The idea is, and this is from my seat, that while future councils may opt to have something like this as a token of recognition for the community, they won't look like this. And so when somebody in the community, a police officer, firefighter, somebody, even a visitor who does something, saves a life, they render some kind of aid, they step up and volunteers with our library, something that is worthy of recognition, they'll be able to say that they have this challenge coin from this council. And it's supposed to be something that is a memento that's worth having and being proud of. So that's the idea behind it. From my seat, I think it's, there's a lot of history. I won't go into it, but there's a lot of history behind the challenge coin and what it means. So I, obviously the one side is it's the same on each coin. It's the mayor, mayor pro tem, and council member or councilman design. And I actually like the top one with the American flag, beautiful Green Valley, and our city seal versus city logo. So that would be my motion, is option one that's currently on the screen.
I'll second that.
I think that's a good choice. Personally, I like that. I like option number one. The only comment I would suggest is that we review councilman and maybe council member, keep it more generic.
Thank you for that. We noticed that as well and meant to say that this evening, so my apologies.
And again, if it's the wishes of the council to retain councilmen, I can go along with that too, but that would be my recommendation to change it to council member. But option number one, it's a great design. Good job.
It's a good suggestion. Change it.
Yep. I can support that. Option one with the councilman replaced with council member.
And I'll support that. I'll second that.
I think we have a first and a
So
second.
we have a first and a second. All right, any further discussion? Any questions?
So then we approve option one, or the one that's been approved up here on the dais. So then we approve that, then do we get together as a council and take up a collection? How do we do that? Because the city's not going to pay for it, right?
I think that was the intent of the goals and objectives process, but staff is happy to help with the processing of that if you so choose.
Perfect.
All right. If no further discussion, all in favor of option number one and the modification on the reverse to council member, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes carry it. Thank you very much, and thank you for your work on this, Justin. I really, really think this is very good. All right, moving on to possible actions on pending legislation, or ask any council member if there are any businesses to report. None. Okay, possible action on pending legislation. Is there anything to report?
I'm sorry? Oh, no, and nothing else to report this evening other than what's on. And I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, not
Can
a
I,
problem.
really quick, there is an assembly bill that someone brought it up to me today, and it really doesn't impact us as a city, but it does kind of. And it's an assembly bill by Assemblymember Holden, and what they're trying to do is basically take over the fast food industry. And they're gonna create a board that will regulate, a 13-member board that's appointed by the governor that will actually regulate wages, labor laws, basically anything to do with the fast food industry. And so we have a number of fast food restaurants in town, and it's a horrible piece of legislation, but I think people need to know. I think people need to know what's happening up in Sacramento.
So the state wants to have more control over everything that we do.
They want to dictate, all labor laws, wages, everything to do at the fast food industry.
Don't they do that anyway?
No, this will be dictated by I read over it really quick. Someone made the complaint to me, so I just glanced over it, so I don't want to say I'm an expert at it. But I think it's a 13-member board that's appointed by the governor and some of his sidekicks. And yeah, they're going to heavily regulate the fast food industry, which, it always has a negative impact.
So if it's council
It's assembly
currents,
member.
we can bring it back the next meeting for a letter, if that's appropriate.
How soon is it being heard? I'm not sure. I'm not sure where it's at in the process. Unfortunately, it was one of those things that was just thrown at me really quick. I just putting it out there, and you might want to research it. If it's already gone through, let's just put it aside. But if it's something that we could do a letter, maybe a quick, this is really a horrible idea. And
Is that the consensus?
Sure.
Well, if it's too far along, we won't come back, but if it's still open to input from communities, we'll bring that back at the next council meeting.
okay.
Okay, sounds good. All right, moving on to department reports.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
We're having a little bit of technical difficulty with the fire report. Can we move that to the back of the agenda or later on in the agenda? Get through some of the rest of the agenda first?
Sure, let's move that to after Megan Wolf and before public hearings. Is that okay, or we can just
Yeah,
enter,
if that's,
put an intercaloric wherever we want to?
just for the record, maybe you want to take a vote to move it to that place in the agenda, if that's okay.
Okay,
So moved.
I'll second.
all right. We have a first and a second to move item number 11 to after item number 17.
Thank
If
you.
no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes carry it. Do we need to rescind that vote?
Is it ready to go? Yeah, you may certainly take it now. Well, it's not quite lined up there, but is it? Can you go to the next one? Make sure it's, okay, good. You're at your discretion.
Anyone like to go ahead and move it back to its original place?
That's a pretty quick team there.
I make a motion that we move it back to its right spot.
Okay, we have a first, here a second. I'll
I'll
second it.
second. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Chief, you're up. Fire Department report, semi-annual.
All right, Honorable Mayor and council members, good evening. So semi-annual report, it's not the big report with all the functions we do and the big updates. So just kind of a quick briefing on where we're at for January 1st to June 30th for the City of Yucaipa Fire Department. So we did see a slight reduction in times. We went from a 7:09 to a 6:54. That's good. We're trending a little downward, working with AMR, trying to get ambulances not at the 40-minute mark and tying up our fire engines. So we've seen a little bit, but nowhere near that 5-minute goal of that we have here. But our responses, as you'll see, other way, have continued to just go up and up. So we saw a 7.1% increase in 2021. We saw a 7.6% increase so far this year. And then July and August have been quite busy. We're at a 14% increase for the summer months so far. So we're overall about a 9% increase for the year so far, even though will be in the year-end report. So we're treating more people. We're responding to more stuff in perpetuity. So that correlates to about a 291 call increase from this time last year. So. And this is just for comparison, our response times. In 2020, we were at a 6:07, and then 2021, when we really had a lot of EMS ambulance issues and COVID and ambulance delays to the hospitals, we really saw that huge impact in 2021. So, but some of the successes we've had to date, we got our, the year prior was the Wildwood, and this last 6 months, we've gotten the Live Oak Firewise community going. 5 Winds Fest, was a big undertaking for the city, but also on the fire side, we got a little bit of history there with some wildland fire issues, so there's a lot of work that went into that. That was obviously a successful outing for everybody. Redlands Bicycle Classic returns, so we are we work with Loma Linda Doctors, and we are the mobile treatment team for that. So, and it's typically fairly low call volume for us, but we do get something, people passing out, broken legs, broken bones. We did LEAP training, which is a empathy outreach training for behavioral health folks that they teach the public safety. So it's just a different approach to behavioral health stuff. So kind of the stuff we learned initially, on the paramedic side, fire department side, this is kind of a retraining from people who have personally gone through it. It's a doctor back east. I don't want to bore you, but it's just a different way to approach those public contacts we have with behavioral health folks. And all of my folks went through that training from County Behavioral Health. New extrication tools for Medic Engine 551, which is a big success. It replaced the very antiquated tools that were no longer cut in modern cars. And then our community active shooter partnership with the sheriffs and the Rancho Station, Yucaipa Station, we taught up at the community center. And then every year, all of our folks go through a wildland preparedness exercise, so they're ready and actually graded on hikes and hose lays and handline construction and chainsaw certifications. So they actually go through a timed graded exercise, and they all pass. And then we've obviously fully resumed our pre-COVID activities like everyone else. So pretty excited about that, actually. Some goals we have in progress, just a snapshot update, working on the paramedic user fees currently. Really trying to hit the vegetation management hard, that resource management as far as hazard fuel reduction, wildland fire reduction risk here in the city. And we're currently in talks with Wildwood State Parks as part of that, as seeing what we can do. So there's some complexities to that. You can't, like grazing would be phenomenal up there, reduce the wildland fire hazard, but you can't put sheeps and goats where the bighorn sheep goes because of diseases and stuff like that. So we're looking at some options, whether that might be some small pile burning, some small projects like that, but to really reduce the threat to our homes up there. Also, we're working with the Firewise councils to convert them to Firewise communities to convert them to fire-safe councils. So it's still community-driven, they have to do it, but that's a 501c3 nonprofit, but then they can put in for grants as well. So we both work collaboratively on these projects, and it increases your potential funding and makes the community more fire-safe. Also working on the renewed Oakland contract. Hopefully, if our county counterparts cooperate, we'll see that here next council meeting. And then working on the countywide EMS RFP. I know our public safety ad hoc folks get that routinely, and we're rehauling the system for EMS in the county. So it's a big deal. Just some of our significant incidents. 3rd Street incident with the Hitching Post Mobile Home Park, a significant structure fire with a severely burned patient. Multiple TCs. I don't want to bore you with 100 TC pictures, but one of the things we got on a grant last year, and I kind of like to highlight it, we get these aerial suspensions or ditches, and these struts we got are just, fire department geeking out stuff here, but that car's rock solid with these struts we get. So, just some more tools in the toolbox that you give our folks to use that we definitely appreciate. So we did catch one of our wildland arson folks. So this did light a fire and was taken by one of our Yucaipa residents. This lit a fire out by the reserve at Crafton Hills, so it was right by some homes there, about a half-acre fire, and they actually did catch it on camera, and that was the fire start right there. So we haven't found them yet, but And then we've had a lot of small vegetation fires. We just had one at Pix Peak the other day, but with the state contract, the wildland contract you approved, now we're getting, air tankers, air attack, dozers, hand crews on every dispatch in our high wildland fire hazard areas, and we've kept everything small. We had a fire off Carter, and you haven't heard of any of these because they're all, we were able to put them out small, drop retardant or tankers or whatever have you, keeping them small. So this is off the 10 freeway down in the wash there. And just some other resource management stuff. We had the 150-year-old oak tree up in the Wildwood City Park. Just other stuff we do as the fire department. We're, saving the city money by replacing arborists. They're going to come out here and, charge a fair going rate for that. And then Mikey, our bull rescue. So it seems so simple. It's just a little culvert, but when you have a 500-pound calf, a little bull sitting with his leg under a pipe, it becomes just more technically complex trying to get him out without hurting him. So I don't know if you guys all caught that, but I think that was our best social media post to date this year by a lot. So people, he's cute. Look at him. People liked it. And it lined up right for the rodeo too, so it's perfect.
The upgraded cat in the tree.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
this
a
is
Yucaipa version of.
the USAR cat in the tree. So, and then just continued training with the guys. Every day we got something new, whether it's COVID or monkeypox or whatever. So we're just constantly training to be ready to respond for the citizens. So short but sweet. Unless you have any questions.
All right, thank you, sir. Good presentation. Any questions of staff?
Great presentation. Over the last year and a half that I've had the pleasure of serving this council, we've I think been hyper focused on the sheriff's department, trying to get them up to speed and catch them up with you folks. And I think we've done a good job, but the fire department is in need of all of our recognition, our support, and our investment. You guys do outstanding work. In fact, I was at work when Pisgah Peak was on fire. I did hear about it, and you had it out before this fire in Azusa started at the same time, and they were still working on theirs when I went home, and you guys was out already, so I went to boast to the councilman at the Azusa City Council, even though I'm one of their subordinates. I got to talk a little bit of smack and let them know that Yucaipa Fire handled business faster than they did. So, no, outstanding work. I don't think enough can be said about the life-saving efforts you guys put into play every day. I know I would miss the state of the city, but I meant every word I said in that video. Our first responders in the city are second to none and are deserving of all of our support citywide. So, thank you.
I appreciate that. And I forgot mudslides. I just don't like to talk about those. So, yeah, mudslides.
You're good, John?
Thank you.
Go back into that slide where you have 2020, 2021, and 2022 calls for service. Are the previous years, is that the annual or is that?
Semi-annual comparison.
That's also semi-annual, okay.
Yeah, last year was close to 8,400, I believe. We're typically busier. Well, we're always busier. Historically, when I was looking at it, we're always busier the second half of the year for whatever reason. Our lull time is always that January, February, March, and then we start climbing up. Summer kind of peaks and fall drops a little bit, and then for whatever reason, like December is a very busy month for us too. So this will probably it will more than double that 4127
So
mark. We'll probably be closer to.
You're on track to at least 8,200 calls.
We'll be well past that.
That's a phenomenal amount
we
of
were at
calls,
84
people.
something last year.
That's just crazy.
We'll probably be closer to 9, I'm guessing.
That's just crazy. And that's for 3 stations.
Yeah, well, especially since July and August so far have been a 14% increase from this time last year.
Have you done any studies showing the propensity of calls in certain areas?
Yes, like a heat map. Yes, so we have one from Citygate, and we're currently in-house working with our GIS staff in the command center, and they're reproducing a heat map so where we can see where those double up call issues and such are. So yes, it's going to be Station 3's area, but yeah, we are working on that instead of just dogmatically saying that's the problem.
If it's okay with city manager and city council, I'd like to see a copy of that.
Okay.
And just
And if
get a better understanding of what our needs are going to be in the future.
And I think to kind of piggyback off that, if there's And one of the reasons I really enjoy being on the Public Safety Committee is for this reason. We get to discuss these things and try to anticipate future needs. Just really excited to work with your folks on how do we get ahead of that before we can, if I've talked about a anticipated rise in crime and a crime wave coming because of silly decisions in Sacramento, and if we are continuing to talk about more housing developments, more building, more population, that comes with it, the human factor of accidental fires, intentional fires, medical problems. So whatever resources or investment needs to be made on the fire department front, please. I think we have a meeting this Wednesday to talk about this kind of stuff specifically. So let's, you have my support, and we'll get through it.
And I think just with persistence forecasting, we can see it's going to get busier. Every year we're going to get that much busier. We had 1 year in our entire history where we've had a reduction in call volume, and that was the COVID when we're the boogeyman. Nobody wants to touch us. Don't call 911. I won't go to the hospital. So, and it was still just barely less calls for service. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, moving on to item number 12,
Well, there was an action, right?
the biannual review of mobile home rent stabilization ordinance. Jennifer Crawford?
Actually, that last item did require a vote. if you-
I am sorry. Approve first, okay. And that's to accept it, correct?
Review and approve.
Review and approved. All right, do I have a motion to review and approve the fire department semi-annual report
So
for
moved.
January 1 through 30?
So moved.
I'll second Councilman Bogue's motion.
All right, if no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 12, Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. On July 11th, the City Council conducted the biennial review and directed staff to prepare amendments on 7 of the 15 items presented. The proposed ordinance number 413 and resolution number 2243, along with redline versions, are attached to the staff report for consideration and action. Should the council concur with the amendments and approve first reading of the ordinance number 413, staff will return to council on September 12th for the second reading. Both the ordinance and resolution will go into effect 30 days following the approval of the second reading. The recommendation is that you approve first reading by title only as read by staff of ordinance number 413, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Yucaipa, California, amending sections 15.20.1010, 15.20.020, 15.20.030, 15.20.050, 15.20.060, 15.20.073, 15.20.080, and 15.20.140 of Chapter 15.0 of Title 15 of the Yucaipa Municipal Code regarding the Mobile Home Rent Stabilization Program and the 2021-2022 biennial review, and that you adopt resolution number 2020-2243. That's all I have at this point.
All righty, I do have 2 speakers, but before we ask them to come up, do we have any questions or comments of staff? Okay, we'll go ahead and invite our speakers up. First out of the gate would be Julie Pauly.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Julie Polly with the WMA. And I think I don't have anything new to add other than we're grateful that our request to revisit the CPI annual increase, we've been asking it for many years, that it keep up with the rate of inflation. Unfortunately, with the cap, it's not going to make much of a difference. So when our costs increase 10% and we only can recapture 4% in rent, it's just going to drive more applications. I say that cautionary. I still think you're going to have quite a few of applications to review. And then publicly, I just wanted to ask if a couple years ago, we sat down with staff before the process with the residents and the park owners, and I thought it was a really good exchange for us to kind of, outside the hearing process, which really limits the back and forth. And so I just would like to publicly request that that we have that again next time. I guess it'd be in 2023. I think it was a victim of COVID and it wasn't safe for us to get in a room and talk, but hopefully in the future we can do that. Because I think even though we have a lot of competing interests, I think just seeking understanding is really beneficial to this process. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Joe Sutt.
Good evening, Joe Sutt, 34111 Wildwood Canyon Road, space 117. And I think we're in agreement about something here. I understand that the biennial review is coming to a close for this session. I think you guys probably would be happy to put it away for 2 years and not think about it. I do want to make a couple of points that I hope you will think about over the next 2 years. And first of all, and I've mentioned this idea several times, and I expect this won't be the last time, once again, I want to suggest that you consider making some small but significant changes in the format of the review process. Specifically, I would like to see the inclusion of 2 controlled, informal meetings with the MRRC and the interested parties, and another one with the City Council and the interested parties. Communication, I think, is an important item here. That would give us more opportunities for discussion, explanation, rebuttal, etc. I believe that the actual communication would be much more effective than the inadequate 3-minute public comment system that is currently in place. You guys have the power to change those administrative rules. Secondly, in case you didn't know, which I'm sure you do know, please be aware that the people from MHET, WMA, etc., do not just represent our local mobile home park owners. They are employed by those organizations and they travel locally, statewide, and all around the country. Their job is to challenge city rent control ordinances when they come up for review or when other rent control issues are brought before various city councils. Obviously, the more compelling their arguments, the more money they earn. Each time they are successful in their endeavors, as with this 100% CPI change, they add more ammunition to their arsenal for the next battle in the next city. Their position is completely one-sided. They work for the park owners. When these powerful groups representing major investors are pitted against totally volunteer local resident associations, such as YMRA or individuals, it becomes absolutely clear that the conflict is a lopsided one. Although neutrality is necessary, the City Council needs to be fully cognizant of that imbalance. Thank you for your time and for your service to the community.
Thank you. Okay, any discussion on this item?
So the Rent Review Commission made the recommendation to council. We had a special meeting. We approved it, all the 15 items. This is just to approve first reading, then second reading, and make it official, right?
Correct. They, council directed us to return with 7 of the total of 15 items that were presented.
So there's not really any discussion. We've already made the decision, correct?
Correct. Anything? Anything? Nothing? All right. Do we have a motion to approve the first reading and adopt Resolution 2022-43?
I'll move. I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, it passes 4-1.
I'm sorry, did that include the ordinance also or just the resolution?
First reading, ordinance number 4, it did include it.
Okay.
Maybe I should have said that out loud. But it was item number 1 and 2.
That was your motion, right?
Yes.
I agree. Yes.
Okay, moving on to item number 13, Andrew Hamilton, Financial Statement Auditor Services Selection.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem,
Good
council
evening.
members. So this agenda, as the mayor stated, is a competitive selection, that process that the city undertook for services related to the outside audit. The city staff published an RFP and also contacted over 10 firms that are auditors in the local area. And we were fortunate to receive 5 different proposals back. 4 were selected for interviews, which were conducted by city staff and a neighboring city's finance director. So this panel chose Van Lant and Fankenal LLP as the best overall firm based on their proposal, their interview, and the price, which over the next auditing firm would save the city approximately $22,000. VLF is what they're called, is the city's current outside auditor. It's staff's opinion that VLF has well served the city of Yucaipa as the and just a little bit about VLF. They concentrate on small and mid-sized cities, which is what falls into Yucaipa, falls in that category. Also, VLF would rotate partners as required by, as the requirement states. City staff also checked references and all responses were positive. With that, staff recommends awarding the financial statement auditor to VLF to perform audit services for the next 5 fiscal years that the city needs those services for. A representative from VLF is available on the phone if you have any questions, and that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions of staff?
Well, I'm going to say what I've been saying all along, and that is that this firm that we obviously have been using audited our books for 6 years while we were being embezzled from to the tune of about $60,000 a year. And I've been asking for a different auditing firm since then because I don't know how an auditing company can audit our books and not find monies that are missing and being stolen by employees. So I'm opposed to this firm having this contract again. I'd rather spend the extra money and get new eyes on the audit and make sure that we've got someone that's going to do a better job and make sure we're not being embezzled from. And I've said that all along. Since we found out about the embezzling, I've been asking for a different auditing company. And I thought we had an agreement with staff that we were going to look at that and possibly do that, but that hasn't happened. So I'm definitely opposed to the first choice. I'd rather go with second choice.
All righty. Mayor Pro Tem Beaver. Mr. Thorpe?
Everything.
Nothing? My question is, the PUN group, they also interviewed ranking in the first place, one with VLF. What is, why did you not go with them?
There were a lot of considerations. I think the partner involvement that we would keep and retain, that partner is the highest level, pretty much the owner of the CPA firm, the auditing firm. So it's our experience, and as the city's management staff, that we've had a lot of that partner involvement that costs that firm a lot more money, and we just have that experience. I think that gives a lot more experience during the audit. I think that was another thing that you don't want to have someone who's less than a year of experience on the audit, and the average. Those were the 2 biggest things: the partner involvement and the average experience that we expect on the audit team. Makes for a more efficient audit. I could keep going.
Well, and taking into consideration Councilmember Duncan's statements, that was a concern expressed early on. And if the PUN group measured equally with Van Zandt, I mean, it's just a logical question that VLF missed something. And the PUN group, which has a very high ranking also, you know, I don't understand why we didn't look at them a little bit more closely. Ray, can you help us with that?
Sure, I'll try to respond to the questions, comments. This RFP process is in response to council's request to look at auditor firms. The panel that was made up of a finance director from another community and our 2 finance staff members looked carefully at the submittals and interviewed all of the parties, all of the proposers, and still made the recommendation that we go forward with these folks. They would be required to switch principals for the next 3 years, but it is certainly council's prerogative to go with the second firm after the recommended firm. With respect to the theft that occurred, the embezzlement that occurred, I share council's concerns about that process. As council is aware, we implemented measures immediately after finding out about it, staff level measures that mitigated the manner of theft that we believe that occurred at the time. It would have been difficult for any auditor or any financial study to catch the embezzlement the way it happened, unfortunately, but we have implemented measures internally that we think, we believe strongly, have protected the community against those kinds of things. And of course, as you know, at that time, the city and community were made whole with the insurances. So, but I certainly understand the concern about that occurrence, and understand if council would choose to select the second firm in the recommendation this evening.
One final item about this scope of work that the auditors perform. It's in the annual audit, and so it states that they conduct their audit in accordance with government auditing standards. There's a litany of folks, and it says those standards require that we plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement. So that amount per year was below the materiality level, quite below the materiality level of the that is determined each year as part of the audit. So while any fraud or embezzlement is serious, the auditors are required, and the standards require that they plan and perform the audit to make sure there's not a material effect. So that's just what the audit report says, so I thought I'd just add that on top of what I've
In my humble opinion, the optics alone, as far as the public is concerned, the optics alone, us going ahead and staying with this organization after all of that, I think just changing auditing companies would be the wise thing to do as far as our council decision is concerned. That's my opinion.
And if council so chooses, we would have to come back with a second firm, just.
Come back with what?
We'd have to come back to council with a second firm in the contract, and that's not on your agenda this evening, but that's certainly a direction that you can come to this evening.
Is the PUN group the one you referenced with the savings of $22,000 annually?
Yes. Their overall cost for those 3 years would be $126,100.
Did our
Sorry, 5
finance
years.
committee
5
have a
years.
chance to review this?
No, we can bring it back to the finance committee as well.
When do you think that would happen? When do you think the finance committee can see this?
Within the next week or so, we can schedule a finance committee.
So do you want to delay this another week or another 2 weeks?
That'd be I think we should, so we can discuss this more. The finance committee can discuss with staff and have a little bit more information.
Is that your motion?
It is.
Then
Or
that's
do we need a motion that way, or let this one die?
Yes, please, yeah.
Okay.
That's your motion, then I'll second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second to move this to another time. Is that appropriate stated?
As
or-
I understood it, refer it to the Finance Committee to come back with a further recommendation to the full council.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it's appropriate, it's time for discussion, that there are some concerns from all of us who were on council at that time. And if Van Zandt and Frank Hanel is, the preferred, then it's after everyone's looked at it and made a decision. So with that,
I think, just really quick, this is maybe immaterial, but I don't want to cast blame on any particular organization for not catching that, because there was multiple organizations that did not do what they were supposed to do. And to cast the blame on one group is just incorrect. So I just want to clarify that. I don't want to throw this all on one auditor, because there was a breakdown in many different organizations outside of the city. So just for clarification.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, but the whole idea of an audit, the whole idea of an audit, you catch everything. You look deep, you dig deep, and you find where there may be inconsistencies. And when the IRS audits me, then they dig pretty deep and they find out where my inconsistencies are. So that's the idea of an audit, right?
I stand by my statement.
All right, we have a motion and a second. If no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, ayes carry it. Thank you, sir. Moving on to item number 14, Ben Matlock, resolution to authorize staff to submit SALC conservation grant request.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. I am happy to be here to discuss the submittal of a formal SALT grant application as part of the land acquisition grant program that they offer through the Department of Conservation. As the City Council is aware, we've been working a lot in the past couple of years as part of the viticulture ideas in terms of the city's growth. Certainly with the Wine Alliance petition for the AVA, been working on that. The city has been fully engaged in the SALT acquisition or the SALT program's planning grant, which is the wine country specific plan. And then in 2021, City Council did authorize staff to submit a grant application for the acquisition projects. During that process, we were unsuccessful. Part of it was the scale of that application and kind of where the guidelines were with the Department of Conservation. And so from that application, we have been quite engaged with Department of Conservation staff, the University of California Ag and Natural Resources group, as well as a support, and then the Inland Empire Resource Conservation Group. And then I've also been participating in the Department of Conservation Working Group for the grant process to get a better handle of how can we be successful to essentially get land under vine and help support that. And so we did submit a pre-application and for 3 different sites that I'll kind of cover. Department of Conservation staff did provide feedback on those applications, finding that they would likely be funded and are excited about these different projects, and certainly very excited for our wine country planning efforts as a whole. And so quickly, I'll just kind of cover the 3 different sites that we had submitted applications for in conjunction with the property owners and their kind of applicant team. So the first one on here is along Pendleton Road, south of D Avenue. This is Valley of the Vines expansion. Cesar Roldan is part of the Wine Country Planning Committee and is a member of the Yucaipa Valley Wine Alliance. He's planted some areas under vine on the property and is looking to do an expansion. And so this would uncover or encompass an additional expansion along the western end towards Pendleton Road, connecting to his existing vines, and then other areas along further back as part of his 40-plus acre property. Second one as part of the North Cork expansion, so one of the local wineries and vineyards in the city of Yucaipa, or technically just outside the city limits, does have areas under vine as well, and then they have been working with a property owner on Yucaipa Ridge Road, directly south of their site, to do expansion there, and so that was another application that we did submit for the SALT grant. And then the last one is at Bearsden Ranch. It is directly outside the city limits, just north of El Dorado Park, near Carter Street. So this is a large piece of property. It used to be the Laird property. And so the owner is interested in establishing different conservation easements along the property, including open space. And so they wanted to pursue a agricultural grant to establish about 10 acres of vine along that property. And then as part of it, they would also work with the city to establish a multi-purpose trail easement that would connect from El Dorado up towards Yucaipa Ridge Road as well, to those trails. And we are excited to continue that. As part of the grant, it is based on the appraised value of that easement area. And so as part of the due diligence, as once the grant is awarded, is assessing what that total value is. However, we did establish, based on the planting costs, $45,000 per acre that may be eligible, plus additional expenses related to surveying, mapping out where those easements would be, and the appraisal process. And so happy to answer any questions, but we would like to continue with the grant application.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
I have a question. So this is similar to the grant that we got a while back when we started the whole Yucaipa Valley Wine Country specific plan, where we wanted to have a grant to conserve agriculture. And it seems like, based on the last planning commission meeting, and I'm not sure how much of this we can discuss here, but shouldn't we let the North Bench residents or these folks here know right now that we're trying to get a grant so that we can move forward with this process before they show up at the next meeting and just raise all kinds of cane like they did the other night? I mean, reality is that this right here, this is what the city, this is what the council is wanting to do, is preserve agriculture and grow grapes. And we're moving ahead with this, but yet the folks that live there, once we get to the point where we're going to decide about something about that area, like, for example, Caesar's property, those folks are going to come unglued just like the North Bench folks did. And all of a sudden, we're going to move forward with this decision. And then we're going to get all kinds of hell raised with us when we actually go to do something. So I don't know. I don't know why we make decisions like this. And I'm all for this decision. I think it's great. But the residents that live in these areas, I'll call them special interest groups, they show up and they sort of try to squash what we're trying to do. So maybe letting them know that we're doing this ahead of time instead of just moving and then confronting them with it would make more sense. Am I off base with that or no?
So I've had others that have suggested that we need to do a little bit more in our, maybe a lot more, in our website and Facebook page relative to some other initiatives as well, like the housing element and arena numbers and all of that, to help people understand that a little better. And this is another area that we could put additional information on our website and Facebook page if council so chooses. I would say that vineyards themselves are kind of separate and apart from whether the property owner might be interested in a winery or a different kind of use. The vineyards themselves are certainly allowed in the zoning that you saw here in those 3 locations. So they're really kind of separate issues, but they are related, as you said. So we could certainly provide more information on our website, Facebook page, relative to our applications for grants in partnership with these property owners and the vineyards themselves.
If I may add as well, the grant applications are voluntary with the property owner. There is a process where they go through the entire review, so it isn't necessarily a done deal with the resolution to support the grant application, but through the appraisal process, there is opportunities from there. And then the final point is that the application, we are taking the lead as kind of the city to help facilitate the conservation easement process, since we do have the ability to manage conservation easements. However, cities are not necessarily required to be the applicant for that. So if there was another nonprofit entity that manages lands, they could submit it without any input from the local agency as well, other than letting us know that we're submitting a conservation. So if we weren't doing it, someone else could do it. But since we're supporting the wine country efforts, we wanted to help facilitate in the way we could.
And I'm all on board. I think this is a great initiative. I really agree with it. I just don't want to have another uprising from the citizens. That was ugly. And I've been through that before, back when the North Bench was having issues before. So I've been involved in it twice now. And I just don't understand why we don't let the people know exactly where we're going and let them sort of get it out of their system before we get to the point where we're trying to make a decision.
It seems to me the truth is that we have a diligent reporter from the news mirror every meeting we have. People are able, the information's there. Call it sign of the times. People would rather be read the news than read the news. So if there is a way, and I did express interest to the city manager to see us really capitalize on our PIO position to get that information to the public so that if we don't say it, if we don't tell them what the position of the city is and the reasoning we're doing something, they will fill in the blanks for themselves, sometimes with misinformation. So I think it's important that our PIO gets ahead of it, gives the detailed information so that at least the public can be an informed populace, and then when they're standing outside of City Hall with pitchforks and torches, it's for good reasons, not because they're misinformed in some regard or they think that we have some intentions of putting 4-story concrete apartment complexes in the North Bench. So that would be, following up on what the city manager said, I was one of the ones who expressed interest in seeing our PIO be more engaged and not necessarily in written word. I think the News Mirror does a fantastic job of reporting the news of the day, or maybe the news of the week rather, but maybe in the form of a video. People love videos. They like to watch and have the news read to them, so I also support this one.
John? Everything, Greg?
I'll move approval.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. I have 2 questions, or maybe just 1 question and a comment. Did you say that that property is outside of city limits?
That is correct.
Why are we engaged in county area?
So as part of the managing of the easements, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the function of the city limits. So as part of the SALT grant application we did last year, it was actually outside of the city limits as well. We've approached it as part of the greater kind of Yucaipa wine country area. And so this property owner did say, hey, I'm interested in kind of tying into all this stuff. I know I'm right at the city limit. And then part of the discussion as well with the property owner, which is why I have the trail easement, is while it isn't a trail in the city of Yucaipa, it does connect a city facility to the greater Yucaipa kind of valley ridge lines that encompass the city. And so that was another feature that would be beneficial for the community residents as a related benefit to his overall goals for that property.
And that will not impair or any way impede our project areas within the city?
No.
Okay.
And just for the record, we did check with the CEO's office last year in the application process.
Okay, good. We already have it covered.
And plus the AVA encompasses more than just the city of Yucaipa. It encompasses that area there, plus Cherry Valley, plus Calamasa. So it's bigger than just us, but this is just going to help us get where we want to be as far as we're concerned, right?
And that's what I want to make sure is that recognize that it goes all the way up to Oak Glen and to Calamasa, but where does the line stop where it's no longer applicable to us and can actually hurt us in our process to try to move this forward? The other thing is that with respect to the vineyards and respect to that, I don't think there's a lot of opposition to that in the North Bench. I think the last round has to do with the density of the housing and maybe the style and the concepts of what's being offered or proposed. That was the issue, not the vineyards themselves. So we need to keep that in mind. We have to separate vineyards and propose housing and or whatever other non-vineyard function may be associated with the actual vineyards. So that's what we have to educate the people on. We do have a motion to accept that or to
Made a motion to approve, yes.
to approve it, and do we have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have a comment?
No, I thought Justin made the second.
Oh, okay. We have a first and a second. If no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes carry it. Very good. Moving on to item number 15. Megan Wolf, purchase order change request, Diamond Environmental.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. This evening, staff is recommending that City Council formally approve a purchase order change request with Diamond Environmental Services for portable restrooms and fencing for city events in the amount of $19,776.10 to cover the additional cost for a revised total purchase order in the amount of $30,000 for fiscal year 21-22. And that City Council formally approve a purchase order in the not-to-exceed amount of $50,000 for portable restrooms and fencing supplies for city events for fiscal year 22-23. The current purchase order includes the cost of providing portable restrooms and fencing for special events and events held at the Performing Arts Center. The request increase includes the cost to provide restrooms at the Music and Arts Festival and the Five Winds Country Music Festival. This past year, we've seen an increase in costs and supplies, including portable restrooms and fencing. And staff has reached out to several companies to provide quotes for these items that are needed for the events. However, staff has not received a response or has received responses such as, we can't take on additional clients. Diamond Environmental has competitive prices and provides a level of customer service needed for our events. The adopted fiscal year 21-22 and fiscal year 22-23 budget includes allocations for each event. Therefore, there's sufficient funding in the accounts in order to accommodate this request. This concludes my report, and I can answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, staff?
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. If no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes carry it. Thank you, Megan. Moving on to item number 16 for me, Preciado Environmental Review and Right-of-Way Acquisition.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and council members. This item is regarding a segment of the overall County Line Road Corridor project. As you know, that the County Line Road Corridor project extends from 5th Street to Bryant Street, which is approximately a 1.5-mile stretch of improvements. The overall project does include roundabout intersections, curb gutter, and sidewalk along County Line Road. The roundabout intersections will allow County Line Road to remain 2 lanes between Bryant Street and 4th Street. As you can see on the exhibit before you, the overall County Line Road project has been divided into segments. Several of those segments are partially funded by different forms of grant funding. The ATP funded portion of the project, which is in green, that segment was completed in 2019, 2020. The LPP grant-funded section in purple is currently under construction, with the City of Calimesa taking the lead with the construction contract. Curb gutter and sidewalk has been installed along certain segments of those limits, and work has started this week at the intersection of Bryant Street and County Line Road. The MSRC portion of the project, which is in orange, is the subject of the item before you tonight. The engineering design and construction plans have been completed for that portion. In completing the engineering design, we identified several right-of-way needs for the project. Those right-of-way needs are in the area circled in red. So we've identified that permanent public roadway easements are required along the frontage of 4 properties. Prior to the construction of the MSRC component of the project, the city must complete the California Environmental Quality Act, or the CEQA environmental review for the MSRC portion of the project. This is also required in order to move forward with the right-of-way acquisition that is required for the project. The CEQA analysis prepared by staff did conclude that the proposed project is eligible for a categorical exemption pursuant to Section 15301C of the CEQA guidelines. And the reason why it qualified is because the project involves minor alterations of an existing public roadway. And it also involves street improvements, which are a negligible expansion of use beyond what is existing at this time. Staff's recommendation before you tonight is that City Council find that the construction of the street improvements and the acquisition of the property, which is required to construct the project between 4th Street and Calimesa Boulevard, is categorically exempt pursuant to Section 15301C. and also direct staff to file a notice of exemption and authorize staff to proceed with a right-of-way acquisition that is required for the project or the right-of-way that is required from those 4 properties. And also authorize the city manager to execute the necessary documents required for that right-of-way acquisition. If approved, staff will return to council with a recommendation regarding the actual right-of-way costs at a future date. That concludes my report, and staff is available for questions you may have.
Thank you, Fermina. Any questions or comments of staff?
I have a question. So on this CEQA determination here, this was done by staff in-house and not, last time we had a meeting, we talked about outsourcing this type of review or this type of work, depending on the workload and all that. So this was done in-house, the CEQA review?
Yes, this was
How many
done.
hours? Do you have some idea how many hours it took to do this review? This is a pretty good-sized project, right?
It's a pretty good-sized project, but because it is consistent with the general plan and it qualifies for an exemption, it required the staff to prepare a notice of exemption, which, because it's consistent, a couple hours, it was very minimal.
Yeah.
Would you say this was more of an EIS, environmental impact study, or review?
It's a notice of exemption that is required to be prepared, and Ben perhaps can add some more details.
Yeah, so the EIS is actually a part of the National Environmental Protection Act, and so it's a federal kind of review process that's equivalent or functional equivalent to EIR. The notice of exemption is, depending on the scale of project, is a fairly kind of simple process, and as part of the on-call contracts, we were not proposing to utilize our environmental consultants to prepare notice of exemptions. The only caveat is if there's perhaps a technical study that's needed to help validate that conclusion. But in this case, the roadway design, lane capacity, the throughput would remain exactly the same. It's just kind of reconfiguring where that right-of-way boundary would be in the street improvements related to that. So there's no other change beyond that. And so with that, it was a much more simplified analysis required.
We're only talking about a couple 100 square feet, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, there's just 2 little tiny portions, right?
Yes, in fact, it's the
And I
area
can't
that's
see why it
highlighted in
would
green
take
that you see
so
on the
much to
screen.
do just those 2 little slivers along, right?
Okay, with that, if there are no other questions or comments, do I hear a motion to approve recommendations?
So move.
I'll second.
All right, we have a first and a second to approve and move forward with recommendations 1, 2, and 3. If no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes carry it. Thank you very much. And now we move on to item number 17, Megan Wolf with the Autumn Fest.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. The 2022 Autumn Fest event will take place on Friday, September 30th from 6 to 10 p.m. and Saturday, October 1st from 1 to 9 p.m. The event will include a beer garden, food and merchandise vendors, a haunted house, a kids zone, a show and go car show. And if I may bring your attention to the screen. Before you, you have Yucaipa Boulevard. It's highlighted in green and blue. And then where it says main stage is the Performing Arts Center. So the area in green will be the show and go car show. The layout is similar to previous years. On Friday night, the road closure will be from 2nd Street to Adams Street on Yucaipa Boulevard and in between Avenue A and Acacia on California. During the show and go, we will shut down the roundabout for 30 minutes so that cars can cruise roundabout to roundabout. On Saturday, the street closure will change, or we'll change it Friday night, and the street closure will go be at 1st Street and Adams. And so we will open up more of the boulevard since we will not be utilizing that space on Saturday. On Saturday, the space that's highlighted in green will be a cornhole tournament. And so we're excited to bring that new feature to the event this year. And the area in yellow will be our food court, and the beer garden will be located inside the Uptown Park. The Kids Zone will be located next to the Performing Arts Center. Inside the Performing Arts Center, we'll have the haunted house, and the areas located in blue will be our merchandise vendors. The street closures will take place on Friday, September 30th, 2022, beginning at 1 p.m. and will reopen on Saturday, October 1st by 11:45 p.m. The entertainment being recommended is on Friday night, the San Bernardino Teen Workshop. And the headline band is the Tijuana Dogs. They are a rock dance party band. And just an interesting fact about the Tijuana Dogs, the lead singer is the husband of the wife who coached Kobe Bryant's daughter and who passed away in the helicopter crash a few years ago. And so the band fundraises to bring sports to youth and keep them involved. And so it's really, they have a great story behind them, and I'm excited that they're gonna be here and visit Yucaipa. Saturday entertainment will be the Yucaipa dance team, a Yucaipa High School band, and an 80s cover band. The event revenues are in the amount of $20,000 and expenses are in the amount of $50,000 with an additional $2,100 for part-time wage expenditures. And this concludes my report, and this evening staff is recommending that council review and approve the 2022 Autumn Fest layout and associated street closures, and approve the beer and wine garden and associated boundaries. And if the report didn't make you want to approve that this evening, we do have a short video that maybe will entice you.
Do we need to be enticed?
The reason that you see a QR code on this video is because this video also plays at the Harkins Theater in Redlands, and it's up there for a few minutes so people can put their phone up, grab the QR code, and it'll take you straight to the city website that has the details of the event.
I saw it. Yeah, saw it last Saturday, yeah. All right, thank you very much. Good presentation. Any questions or comments of staff? One question, is this layout similar or the same as last year's?
Thank you. This layout is the same as last year's.
Thank you for that. I'll be honest, whoever ran it before drove me nuts because every time drove the vendors nuts because they never knew what was going on year to year. And finally, we got some sort of stabilization, which is really good. People know what to expect now. Very good. Thank you very much. With that, if there's no other questions or comments, you'll hear a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, that's to review and approve the 2022 budget and approve the beer and wine garden associated boundaries. If no further questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes carry it. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item number 18, which is a public hearing. So I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing for case number 22-063 GPA, City of Yucaipa.
So before you is a request to continue the housing element adoption process for the September 12th, 2022 meeting. We have been finalizing the last of our kind of comments from HCD, and right now kind of just double checking we covered all our bases on our punch list and doing the final document formatting, and we should be having it posted in the next couple days.
So I will move to continue the public hearing for case number 22-063, the general plan amendment to the city council meeting of September 12th, 2022.
Seconded.
We have a first and a second. If no questions,
Is there any way that we can get some information on this? I know this is the third time we've pushed it forward, but I mean, we're going to get this on a Thursday, and this is going to be a big deal. We're going to have to read it like over the weekend. Is there any way we can get bits and pieces to see where this thing is going or where it's at?
So you've seen the full document, the draft document. We can certainly get an update version to you early before the next council meeting. I don't know that there are huge changes to the draft, but we'll get it to you early. I think mostly what's happening is kind of offline demonstrated support for what is in the document itself. For example, the mobile home park overlay segment of the document, Ben has had to provide additional information relative to that, but not necessarily change that element of the document too much. But yes, we'll get you a document early.
As soon as it's available, it will be posted on the city's website as well. And so we do try to have these trend documents available up online in advance of any meetings or adoption process so that members of the public have an opportunity to review.
And we'll make sure it's a red line version, redacted red line version, so that it's easier for you to follow.
Okay, and there's no public comments, and we have a motion and a second. No further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Okay, motion carries. Continue this item. Next up, study session number 19. Ben Matlock again.
All right, so I'm here with staff from the Cosmic companies that's going to provide an overview of enhanced infrastructure financing districts. This is a tool that is relatively new, kind of a post redevelopment era tool that is now available as in the toolbox, and so we wanted to provide an overview of that and receive council direction. I do want to note as well that this is part of an effort that is being funded through SCAD, or Southern California Association of Governments, so they are doing the project managing of that and providing the funding for this analysis, and happy to introduce the Cosmic companies.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Joe Dieguez. I'm a Senior Vice President with Cosmont Companies. We are a real estate economic development and public finance advisory firm. I head our special districts and infrastructure funding group. I'm joined this evening as well by Felicia Williams, who works on a lot of our city-county partnership negotiations with respect to this subject matter. For me personally, it's the first time I'm back here before this body in about 8 years. I had the pleasure with some of my colleagues for working with the city and some members of this council on a retail market analysis. And it was 8 years ago, believe it or not. So the subject for discussion today is a tool in the toolbox for funding and financing infrastructure. This is not the first time some members of this council may be hearing about this topic, these enhanced infrastructure financing districts, or EIFDs. It was evaluated several years ago with a different consultant. It was taken quite far, in our opinion, as far as being evaluated, and the city even had some discussions with the County of San Bernardino for partnership. The county determined not to partner at that time. There were fewer of these districts actually formed than there are today, and now we actually have one formed in San Bernardino County, the city of Rancho Cucamonga, which we believe helps these discussions. This time around, as Mr. Matlock covered, we have SCAG as a partner funding our work, as well as assisting with some of this coordination between entities like the city and the county. The goal is to fund infrastructure, public projects that can catalyze housing development and other development within two areas we're mainly talking about: the College Village specific plan area and the Freeway Corridor specific plan area, where the housing element is sort of designating the housing to actually happen. As may be obvious, the greatest fiscal benefit to the city is with a partnership with the county. It's never a guarantee, but it's always the goal. We'll talk about that. And then just fast forward, next steps. Most importantly, we want to give you this briefing, get your questions and your preliminary feedback you may be prepared to share with us. And then if we do have your support between our team and staff, we would like to talk to the county again with a new set of analysis, new set of circumstances to determine their interest in partnering. We also have more outreach to do. The topic of outreach is very important. It came up earlier today on another matter. So that includes property owner outreach. It includes local stakeholder outreach to make sure everyone understands what this is, and very importantly, what it's not. It's not a new tax. We'll mention that a couple times. I'm going to ask my colleague Felicia to talk a little bit about what it is. Some of it may seem familiar from a couple years ago. There have certainly at least been a few updates in the law since it was last evaluated by the city of Yucaipa. And then I'd like to come back and talk to you about specific boundaries that are being evaluated currently, what some of the numbers are shaking out like in terms of dollars available to fund projects, potential projects to actually be funded in these areas, and then reviewing what could potential next steps look like if council is supportive of this idea. So at this point, I'll pass it to my colleague, again, for the refresher on the subject matter.
Thank you. Felicia Williams with Cosmont Companies, and I'm here to just provide an overview of what tax increment financing is. So one important point is that this is not a new tax. So some may have heard of community facilities districts, Mello-Roos. This is not what that is. This is our former friend redevelopment coming back in a new iteration. And essentially what happens is when a district is formed within the boundaries, the baseline assessed value is frozen by the assessor. Any incremental development over that provides an increase in assessed value and therefore in property taxes. Once those increased property tax revenues are received, they are put into a separate fund, depending on how much the city would like to put aside in this fund. And this fund is used to pay for public improvements. And public improvements will show an example of what that is. Usually they are paid for through bond issuances, and that's why this money is put in a separate fund. But this graph, it just illustrates the period of new development. The new property value goes into the EIFD account. And then once the EIFD terminates, then the property tax revenues go back to the taxing entities that agreed to form the district. So the mechanics of an EIFD that we just talked about, so this is related to private property investment. So excludes public property, nonprofit properties. Anyone who pays property taxes is really the one who will generate the assessed value increase, and this will be put into a separate fund. So a private property owner makes a new development, makes an investment in their property. That increased property tax revenue goes into a separate fund, and then that fund pays for public improvements. And one of the main reasons why we're here is to get some input on some of the public improvements that are needed in Yucaipa that the funds could pay for. And once again, the projects are usually paid for by issuing bonds. The city of Laverne just issued the first tax increment financing bond in the state of California. We worked with them on that. So that's the first bond issued to finance improvements. And they're improvements that connect across Arrow Highway and go to the county fair. So the fundamentals of an EIFD, these are long-term districts. So once, like the city of Laverne just issued bonds, the EIFD lasts for 45 years from that first bond issuance. And the main reason is that the bonds need to be paid off. So it lasts for 45 years. The governing board is the public financing authority that is formed specifically for the EIFD. And the public financing authority consists of elected officials from the city, and if the county joins, then the county elected officials would sit on the board as well. But there's a specific constitution of that PFA that's explained in the legislation that's required to oversee the EIFD. Once the PFA is formed, an infrastructure financing plan is written for the EIFD. And this outlines the type of improvements that can be funded and how they will be funded and over what period of time. When that infrastructure financing plan comes to the board, that is the opportunity for the public to provide input on the infrastructure, on how it can be funded, on various things in the plan. And that plan over time can be amended as well. So it's not a permanent plan. It can be amended over time. To form the EIFD, there is no public vote, so also very different from Mello-Roos or a community facilities district. There are about 4 public hearings that need to happen, so they make sure that the community input is provided, and then it is subject to a majority protest vote at the end of the property owners within the district, but there is no public vote. So what kinds of projects are eligible? We'll see pictures on the next page of the types of projects, but any property with a useful life of 15 or more years and of community-wide significance. So I think there are two important points to make here. Services are not provided, so if you build a park and then you have the park maintenance staff there, the EIFD can't pay for that. So it doesn't pay for services or salaries, but it pays for the physical improvements. Also, these projects can be of community-wide significance. So even if you form the EIFD boundary, you can still fund projects outside of the boundary as long as they are of community-wide significance. They can use the tax increment from the district. And the funds can be used to purchase, construct, expand, any sort of improvement, seismic retrofit, rehabilitation, and a maintenance contract, so which is different from staffing in a park. So some of the types of things, and this is directly from the legislation has added a few items, especially post-COVID, that can be financed, but really anything that you think of as public infrastructure, parks, roads, brownfield remediation, now broadband has been added, and then small businesses and nonprofit facilities. But you can see there are affordable housing. This is the main reason why SCAG has funded this grant, is to try to support infrastructure for more affordable housing. But other items here that can be financed. And now I will turn it back over to Joe, who will talk about specifically the Yucaipa EIFD. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Felicia. So why is any cities or counties actually approving these things? A few reasons. Everyone is completely different. Two of the common themes: return on investment, number one. From a dollars and cents basis, we're not seeing any cities and counties going after these things if it's a drain on the general fund, but rather if it's actually positively accretive, actually a positive return on investment, net of the dollars allocated to the district and net of police, fire, other services costs for new development, net of all that. If it's not a positive return, we're seeing cities and counties saying, no, thank you. So first, dollars and cents, it has to make sense. Beyond that, policy goals, things like job creation, housing production, just resolving deficient infrastructure or deferred maintenance. Those are common themes that we see a lot as far as a return on investment. Number two, very importantly, it's not just about the increment that gets deposited in these EIFD account. It's the ability of these districts to elevate the ability to get other money, just to put it bluntly. So good examples are, if your city approached the county, if we're able to secure a match from them, that's probably the most direct way we're recruiting other dollars to be invested in this community. A bit more indirect, state grants, such as housing, transit, parks, and open space grants, they're writing into their grant scoring guidelines. If a city or county has one of these districts in place, you're automatically getting more points on your grant application. So we've got, especially at the state level, recognition that these districts are long-term commitments of local funding, and in the ideal scenario, multi-jurisdictional partnerships, ideally with cities and counties partnering. So it's not just about the increment, it's about using it as a platform to bring in yet other dollars. And that's, by the way, in addition to the private sector investment that we've seen being catalyzed with this commitment of funding. It was a whole different circumstance. I believe the last time the city was evaluating this tool, years ago. They've proliferated pretty exponentially over the past few years. So we're at about 21 districts formed across the state. They're all so different. Some of these are really urban, transit-focused. Many of these, like our work in the Central Valley, is just about getting people off wells and septic onto water and sewer, all different shapes and sizes. We've got cities doing these on their own. We've got counties doing these on their own in unincorporated jurisdiction. And we have about 5 city-county partnerships, which we really like to see, cities and counties partnering. For anyone asked, the county of San Marino has not said yes to anyone yet to be a partner. They've been one of the harder ones to get on board. We're optimistic. Part of our scope of work is, again, if this council is supportive, to at least approach them again to see with this new set of circumstances if they're amenable. But that is usually the goal, to get a city and county partnership. Rancho Cucamonga was formed July 19. That's the first one in the county. Redlands, Fontana, Rialto, you all here. We've got more and more cities, Barstow, more and more cities in the county pursuing this tool. So where are we looking? As mentioned briefly during the introduction, focus here has been basically where housing is focused within this city. College Village, up in the northwest of this graphic, and then your freeway corridor specific plan area south of the 10, and some of the somewhat adjacent opportunity site areas just north of the 10, just north of the freeway corridor specific plan area. The idea is capturing areas that are not already built out, but areas where there is potential for new development that ideally includes housing. And the goal is for a lot of this infrastructure to support that development, both residential and non-residential. It's the infrastructure that really needs to happen to unlock this development. So about 1,300 acres in terms of your whole citywide acreage. It's about 7%. What's interesting on this page, by the way, 7% of your acreage, I said. When you look at it, I'm trying to go backwards and I'm failing. I said 7% in terms of acreage, but when you look at it in terms of assessed value, it's about 1%. So when we see something that's 7% of acreage and only 1% of AV, it usually means we're doing a pretty good job of drawing a boundary because there's so much potential for new value growth compared to what's there today. That's the point I wanted to make there. So what does our contract include? It's looking at different ways to draw this boundary. It's crunching the numbers. How many dollars are we actually talking about? Important conversation for today. What are the potential projects to be funded with this tool? Today is just informational. We'll take any feedback. The whole separate set of conversations to continue to be had about potential projects. Who are the partners, both public and private? You heard mentioned county, state grants. There are also property owners and developers on the private side. And then our contract, as Mr. Matlock also mentioned, if the council is supportive, we are also scoped to help you all the way through formation to the finish line, not just a study. So the numbers, there are so many different ways these districts can be done in terms of duration, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Felicia mentioned they're up to 45 years from first debt issuance. So these can be 50 years and beyond, depending on when that first debt issuance occurs. The city has its own ability to draw the boundary, how much percentage of that new property value, the new property tax within the boundary, how much of that is contributed to the district. We're looking at scenarios of 25% or 50%. We don't generally like to go beyond 50% because we want to continue to have at least 50% continuing to flow to the general fund to pay for police, fire, other services needs. So we look at scenarios with the city alone and scenarios with the city and county partnership. Not to go through all the numbers in gritty detail, although very happy to answer questions, just in terms of ranges. Within 5 years, between 9 and 26 million of dollars available between what's accumulating in the EIFD bank account and what can be accessed through debt issuance. Within another 5 years after that, so 10 years from formation, forecasting between 18 and 50 million, talking very high level. And then even beyond that, again, these can be 50-year districts or even more on the scale of 23, 65 million in present value terms. As economists, we always look at present value because $1 50 years from now is worth much less than a dollar today. So we look at present value terms in that second to last column. But what is that in nominal dollars, not accounting for inflation or anything like that? Over 100 million to over 300 million. So a lot of dollars available, particularly in a scenario where we've got a county partner. Never a guarantee, but it's usually a goal to achieve a county partnership. I talked about this enough. Just for the sake of time, I won't spend much more time on it, but the idea is, again, not just about the increment I showed on that previous page, but also leveraging that to bring in other dollars, especially grants. What kinds of projects have been discussed so far? So far, it's been basically us discussing with staff, consistent with your planning documentation, your specific plans, what's come up, College Village transportation infrastructure, freeway corridor, housing supportive infrastructure, broadly defined. Library improvements have come up. We think that may be a good way to get the county interested. Flood control, storm drain, other types of utility enhancements, parks and open space, those sorts of public amenities. Parking is eligible, that's come up, community parking structure. And these are just the conversations so far. To the extent council has comments or input, please, we would welcome that. And our outreach will continue after today. This is just sort of the initial briefing. I talked about outreach, so it really begins today. Before we talk to anyone else, we wanted to have this briefing with you all and address your questions and hear any of your feedback. We then plan to have a property owner stakeholder briefing targeting, I forgot what we said, Ben, I think it's probably third week of September, I believe. And then after that, a briefing with your Economic Development Advisory Committee, and welcome other members of the public, really whoever's interested in this subject matter. Again, education, what this is, what it's not, making sure people know it's not a new tax, for example, and talking to them about what it is. And even beyond this all these evaluation phase briefings, as Felicia mentioned, there are a whole separate set of public meetings and hearings required in the actual implementation phase if the city does determine to proceed with this, just as part of state law. So that's really it. Would love to hear any initial feedback or just suggest questions tonight. We've got more work to do on our end, just analysis, continued outreach. If it is the council's direction, would like to approach the county to brief them, gauge their interest in partnership, and then if this were to move forward, our contract through SCAG expires June of 2023, and so we're sort of motivated if the city desires to move forward to actually get this thing done through the finish line before middle of 2023. So thank you for entertaining that. I'd love to address any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions of staff?
So why do you think this county of San Bernardino has been really reluctant to get on board? Because we talked about this 6 years ago, 5 years ago, and we were, once the RDA had sort of ended and we talked about the EIFD, we were all excited about that and we started the process, but then the county didn't want to be involved. So why are they so difficult?
Yeah, I mean, they don't have to say yes, right? So it's hard to make them say yes. What they've told us so far is seeing the mutual benefit for them in different jurisdictions. We've not talked to them about Yucaipa yet, but they really want to be convinced, number one, that there's something clearly in it for them in terms of the benefit of the projects to be paid for, how it meets their own elected official goals, whatever that may be, whether it's job creation or housing production. They want to hear that case made very clearly. They need to be convinced that it is not a drain on their general fund. The default position so far in Cosmont's discussion with the county is that this is a drain on the county general fund and they don't see how it can be a positive. And we've not talked to them about Yucaipa yet. We think we could make a case, whether it's about library improvements or just seeing brand new development happen in an area like Freeway Corridor where nothing has happened yet. We think we can show them with numbers that it can be. But I don't know, at a high level, there hadn't been one approved, even by a city in the county in the past. Now we have that in Rancho Cucamonga. So they've seen it can be done, at least at the city level. So we've got that going for us now. Before, they were kind of like, no one else has done it. We don't want to be the first. Now we've got 21 done across the state. That's changed. And other than that, I don't quite know. I mean, it's about everyone's got other priorities. We just need to make a good case.
Now, we're talking about going through the approval process not through the supervisoral board. We're talking about going through the county tax collecting agency, correct? We're not getting approval through the supervisors. This goes through the county tax collector.
Yeah, it's really all of the above.
All of the above?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The action to approve would have to be a board of supervisors majority vote. But yeah, the auditor controller is the one who has to administer it, and the assessor is one who assesses. So when we talk about stakeholder briefings, we're really talking to all of them, but it is the board that has to approve.
Okay. I have another question for you. So are we talking about bonding on future anticipated increment? Is that what we're talking about? Is this anticipated increase or is this actual increase?
Okay, here's the blunt answer. It depends on how aggressive we want to be. Now, here's the real life answer. People who buy bonds, municipal bonds, city bonds, county bonds, they want to be sort of guaranteed of their return. So the realistic answer is the conservative case is only what's hitting the bank account at the time of the bond issue. 3 years from now, if this thing were formed, the most likely bond that would be purchased is only one that is based on that year 3 revenue, repeating in perpetuity after that. A more aggressive scenario would be, hey, in year 3, this is where we're at, but we think this is where we'll be in year 5, and we're gonna issue bonds based on that. That we'd consider aggressive, and that's typically not what a California municipal bond buyer is going to accept. So while it's possible to do that more aggressive one, the one that have been issued to date, like the one Felicia mentioned, it's just, where are you at in year 3? We're only gonna bond based on that, and we're gonna build in a whole bunch of safety measures like, what if things take a 50% downturn from that period of time? And So it's really more of the various alternatives on this screen. It's just letter A, what's hitting in that year, and we're just going to base our bond based on that level continuing forward, not necessarily banking on the growth of that.
So on a vacant parcel, which is the majority of the areas we've outlined here, that increment could take years and years before we ever get anywhere where we're gonna be able to borrow for an EIFD. Is that correct? It's not like RDA. RDA is if we improved an existing structure, that value would go up. But you're using the EIFD to do for infrastructure for a vacant parcel. And if it doesn't, you don't get the infrastructure, then you're not improving the property. So literally that vacant land could sit there for, I don't know, 40 years before anything ever happens.
Yeah, chicken and the egg, right?
That's why I was asking you, is this anticipated or is this actual?
Yeah, what we typically like, and it's actually the way we've drafted it, the boundary here for Yucaipa with a huge amount of input from city staff, is incorporating areas where you do have some stuff moving forward in the near term, like some of your industrial mainly, and actually using that increment to benefit some of the other areas. So there's a little bit of flexibility there, taken advantage of. Your industrial will drive some value growth because industrial is trading at a crazy rate these days. That will drive some value that can be leveraged in some of these other areas, hopefully get some of the development in those areas going and continue to build momentum. So those numbers of new development potential, we're breaking that out over 25, 30 years, and the numbers that we showed as accessible just within 5 years, we're really just basing that on realistically, what can we expect based on stuff that's already in the pipeline, being processed through your local developers, certainly your industrial folks, and nothing more. Not trying to be too aggressive. But it's all about gaining momentum. So for that reason, this tool is not the tool to give you the most bang for your buck year one. It's just not. That's not what this tool is. That's why we're always looking at other money, such as forming the district, immediately going out for grants to try to get some momentum going, and then leverage that momentum. This is not an upfront funding tool by any means. We'd like everyone to know that.
If I may follow up on that as well, the other side of that coin is the sooner you form an EIFD, the sooner you capture that baseline and you capture that tax increment. And so oftentimes we look at the most pessimistic alternative and a range of alternatives. Sometimes you have to look at the most optimistic or you lose that opportunity. With an EIFD and the potential development that is planned for and already approved on County Line Road, for example, may result in tax increment financing ability sooner rather than later in smaller increments. So for example, that vacant property that exists today with an approved industrial project, light industrial project on it may go from something like $25,000, and I don't know these numbers, but $25,000 a year in property taxes to as much as $1 million a year in property taxes for one property or several properties. And that creates increment that's available potentially for financing. So depending on your limit and your threshold in terms of the minimum amount of financing for that phase one, if there is the private sector is going to do the infrastructure that is required to get that first phase going, and it creates enough increment for a relatively small finance element in the EIFD, that relatively small finance element might be an important element when partnered with other grant funding and other funding sources for a phase of the interchange, the Wildwood interchange, for example. So having that in place earlier rather than later on the other side of the coin is also an opportunity to capture that tax increment early. If I may make one more comment, if it's okay with the consultant and the council, can you go back to that graph that shows the increment so well? I think this graph really explains it well.
Is that the one with the baseline?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of, and this is in response to the question that was asked by Councilmember Duncan about, what will it take for the county to approve it? What is it that the county might need? And one of the things that we talked about back then, and I assume we're going to be talking about again, is rather than a frozen horizontal line, they may want to see some kind of a graduated increase in the baseline property tax as it relates to something akin to Prop 13, a 2% a year increase to mitigate the impacts on their operating budget, something like that. So that may be part of the conversation with the county as well.
That's all I have.
All right, any more questions or comments? Okay, this is a primer for EIFDs. So thank you very much.
Any input, any direction? Two of the infrastructure elements up here, if I may, are the community public parking structure in the uptown. That's something that we really haven't talked about a lot before. The interchange is another. The library is assuming we get the grant, and we're trying to come up with the $10 million local match that's required for that. So are we going in the right direction on kind of in general on those fronts?
Well, if you recall, the reason why the state killed the RDA is because every city was trying to put every parcel that they have into the RDA, and over time, the state caught on to that and killed the project, killed the program. So I think we need to be careful about loading it up with too many, maybe a couple different areas. We don't go down that road, and I don't think it would go through the county anyway. And then I think you're right when it comes to the baseline. I think you do need to put a Prop 13, what is it, a 2% or whatever it is. I don't know what Prop 13 allows. And what else? Oh, and as soon as possible, because, it takes years for this stuff to take place, so.
And maybe to add to that, look at, as was suggested, be optimistic and look at these projects that are closer to fruition. And those are not sure bets, but I think it's an easier sell and a higher probability of success. We just don't want to just get a plot of land and just create an EIFD, but maybe, like you said, parking structure, or maybe some development on the other side of the freeway. If that becomes more closer and we need to use something like that, that's where we would want to focus, in my opinion. These things that probably will come to fruition.
What did you have in mind?
What you saw, the parking structure, and as I said earlier, I do think it's going to, as Councilmember Bogue mentioned as well, I do think it's going to require a graduated increase in property taxes to the member agencies. And by the way, there is also a component for each of the water districts, San Bruno Valley Municipal Water District and the Yucaipa Valley Water District now. RDAs used to include the educational partners, but the EIFD does not allow for either the school district or the community college district, but the San Bruno Valley Municipal Water District and the Yucaipa Valley Water District are also players, just not at the level of the county. The county, I think, is kind of the key to the whole thing, so.
You're talking about a parking structure in the uptown?
Yes.
Yeah. And then obviously there's been a lot of talk about library, about building a new library, having a new library. And then there's the freeway corridor specific plan. I mean, I think it's a good idea. I think at least we should explore it. I mean, I think we did before. County didn't want to do it. We kind of backed down. But I think we should look at it again if we're, I think it's an opportunity.
And you now have 3 supervisory districts that are discussing it. I mean, that's the other interesting perspective, is you've got Victorville working on a different kind of tax increment financing, but the similar approach. And as was mentioned earlier, Rancho Cucamonga actually went ahead and formed the district with the ability of the county to be added later, and of course Yucaipa. So you've got 3 supervisory districts that are engaged. And when we did it several years, 6 or 7 years ago, it was just us. So.
Okay, so you got some direction there?
Thank you.
Enough? Okay, that's it. Announcements, are there any announcements, member of the city council like to make?
Well, I'm excited about Autumn Fest, big time excited about that. It looked really good.
Justin? No. Greg, you want to talk about the state of the city?
Oh, well, you were the star. Okay. All right, this last, was it last week? We had the State of the City, big turnout, huge turnout. Mayor Avila did an incredible job. Ray Casey did an incredible job. We had probably one of the biggest turnouts we've had. And Props AV did a video. It was incredible. And if you haven't seen the video, go to YouTube and type in State of the City 2022, and you can watch it. Great video. I'm just really impressed with everything that's going on in this city. I love Yucaipa. It's a great place to be. I wouldn't trade it for any other area. This is just an awesome city.
I agree. Okay, moving on. Closed session items, Mr. City Attorney.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. We've got 3 items on closed session this evening. The first is a conference with real property negotiator regarding the property at 12475 Fifth Street. City's negotiators, Mr. Casey, the negotiating parties, Ruben and Maria Villegas, and under negotiation is price in terms of payment. We don't expect reportable action on that this evening. There's also the public employee performance evaluation for the city manager, and a separate item, conference with labor negotiators regarding the unrepresented position city manager, and the agency's negotiators are the mayor and the mayor pro tem. We also do not expect reportable action on those items this evening.
All righty, thank you very much for hanging in there, folks. We'll go ahead and adjourn the open session and move to the closed session. Thank you. Have a great evening.